Where is the United States in Bible prophecy? Well, that's a valid question to ask. The place to start looking for an answer would be with Israel. After all, the U.S. isn't mentioned in the Bible at all, not directly, whereas Jerusalem is mentioned 700 times. Jerusalem and Israel and the Jews, major important topic in the Bible. Now, the modern nation of Israel is a genuine miracle. Her existence fulfilled numerous prophecies regarding the regathering in the last days of the Jews to their homeland. Excuse me. For example, Isaiah 11, verse 12, he will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And then Isaiah 66, 8, who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall a land be born in one day? Shall a nation be brought forth in one moment? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she brought forth her children. May 14, 1948, a day that Israel became a nation again in her homeland. Can a nation be born in a day? Yes, if it's Israel and it's prophetic. Now, God makes one thing clear to all other nations. This is from Genesis. He's talking to Abram, who would later be Abraham, and he said, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. I'll bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. History shows the U.S. as a blessing to Israel up till now. President Harry Truman, for example, made certain we were the first nation to recognize Israel back in 1948. But we must also consider these prophecies. This is from Zechariah chapter 12. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the peoples. All who lift it will surely hurt themselves, and all the nations of the earth will gather against it. We see that happening in the time in which we live, do we not? Israel is a heavy burden to the nations of the world. No one ever knows quite what to do with Israel. I think most people would, in other countries of the world, would wish there wasn't an Israel, and they work towards that sometimes, actively and sometimes behind the scenes. But anyway, it's a prediction that's come true, and it's coming true more and more each day. And then also in Zechariah, on that day I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And so God's not messing around when it comes to taking care of his people. Blessing Israel does not mean we condone everything she does or does not do. And cursing her, in part, would involve siding with her enemies. So all of this leads to the January 31st headline on Axios that said, U.S. State Department reviewing options for a possible recognition of Palestinian state. I don't know the whole history like I probably should, or we all should, but people are always telling Israel what land really belongs to her. You ever notice that? It'd be like, somebody coming through California. So, this where we live in Kings County, this actually, it's not your land. We're going to move some people in here, and you guys are going to have to move out. And so people are always telling Israel what to do, and the State Department says, well, we think the solution to this is to have an even stronger Palestinian state right next to Israel. Now, the fact that they are even thinking about this is a huge shift in thinking on Palestinian statehood. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long opposed a two-state solution, recently rejected calls for Palestinian sovereignty. Israel is vehemently against any recognition of a Palestinian state by individual countries or by the UN. And so also the article says, Secretary of State Tony Blinken asked Winkin and Nod at the State Department. I made that part up, I'm especially happy about that. On possible U.S. and international recognition of such a state. So that's what our government is doing right now. Who knows what's going to come out of it? Maybe something, maybe nothing. But it's the kind of thing you don't want to hear about as a Christian, because you think, we're right up there, maybe crossing the line in terms of not supporting Israel, in fact, cursing Israel. So where are we in prophecy? Well, if all means all, then we, the United States, will be against Israel as well at some point. Now, we could be seeing the start of that. I would suggest a more likely scenario. The church is removed from earth by Jesus, leaving the U.S. crippled, at which point our great nation would have to ally with all the other nations of the world. People say, they talk about how the church is failing and how, we're not doing our job and all of that. But I think you realize that if the church was removed, every living believer was gone, it would devastate our country. Not just our country, but our country in particular. And we would go immediately into being a fourth world nation. Think of the people in leadership and just, millions of people would be gone. It'd be chaotic. And so it'll leave us crippled, and we would have to join the other nations of the world. We live in the church age. It's between the first coming of Jesus and his return to establish and rule the promised kingdom on earth for 1,000 years. That return will be preceded by a 7-year time of incredible trouble upon the earth. Most commonly, it's called the Great Tribulation. Sometimes only the last 3.5 years are called the Great Tribulation. We like to call it the time of Jacob's trouble. That's what Jeremiah called it. And we like that name because it reminds us what it's really for. It is for God to deal with his people, Israel, and to bring them back to faith in him so that by the end of the tribulation, all Israel is saved. And so it's not about the church, it's about Israel, and so we will be taken away. The Lord promised his church, he said this, I will keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Now, what do you think he was talking about? Well, we think he's talking about the Great Tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble. So did a guy named Irenaeus in the 1st and 2nd centuries A.D. He's a guy that knew the Apostle John and was a disciple of one of John's disciples. And in his writing, he said, when in the end the church will suddenly be caught up, then it is said there will be tribulation such as has not been since the beginning, nor will be. And so you've got what we read in the Bible from Jesus. You see that this 2nd century guy, Irenaeus, is telling you what the church believed at the time, that the church would be removed before the Great Tribulation. So what do you think? I'm thinking we're going to be removed before any part of the Great Tribulation. The Lord could come for us imminently. When he comes, he's going to resurrect the dead in Christ, and then we who are alive and remain will get our glorified bodies immediately. We'll be taken to heaven while the Lord's plan is enacted on earth. Are you ready for the rapture? If not, get ready and stay ready and keep looking up, because ready or not, Jesus is coming.